we're as close to losing it right now as ever because one political party that is in power is using the justice system to persecute and to prosecute its foes. And if we allow that to stand, we're gone as a nation. That's the end of America as we've known it. And that's one of the reasons that it's so important to get out there, because our founders knew that we would reach this point. And they built in a safety mechanism. And that safety mechanism is we the people.
That's right.
That's it. But we have to do our job. You know, Adams, our second president, said that our Constitution was designed for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate for the government of any other.
That's right.
Right now we have any other. And we have got to turn that around, and I think we have a relatively short period of time in which to do it. But using the vote properly is a big part of it. Most people, when they go into the voting booth or they get their voting sheet, they look for the name that looks familiar. It could be Satan. Yep, I know that one. In many cases it is. You know, that doesn't work. And that's how we continue to get the same people with sort of rotten policies that really don't pertain to the people. And we have to remember the people who are advocating for fundamental change in our society, most of them are not bad people. They are deceived people.
There you go.
They don't have all the information. You know, if you listen to the wrong people and you don't do your own research, it's very easy to be misled. And what happens in virtually every nation that goes down the path of communism or socialism, the first thing they do is they dumb down the people. Have you noticed how that's happening in our country now?
Yes.
You know, when Alexis de Tocqueville came here in 1831 to study our nation, one of the things that really impressed him was how educated our people were. I mean, he could go out in the middle of the woods and find a mountain man, and the guy could read. And the guy could tell him about the Declaration of Independence. What do we have today? You've probably seen some of those man on the street interviews. They ask people, you know, who fought in the Revolutionary War? What nations border the United States? China, you know, I mean, it must hurt to be that dumb. But the problem is, it's rampant in our society today. And when you don't have a lot of information, you're much easier to manipulate. So when somebody like Mayorkas comes along and says, oh, the border is secure, there's no problem, we got it under control, and millions of people are coming across, undocumented people. Think about the implications of that. You know, last week, the 8 people from Tajikistan who have ties with ISIS were apprehended and released back into the population. How many are there that we didn't apprehend? And what are their intentions? And if we don't have a whole plethora of terrorists who intend to destroy us, then they're not very good terrorists. They've had wonderful opportunity that this administration is allowing. Are we going to be able to survive another 4 years of that? I'm not sure we can survive another 6 months of it. We need to be praying on our knees every night that God will sustain us, because it is not our leadership. You look at the Russians, you know, who are probing now with their ships off of our shore.
Yes, that's right.
The Chinese, the Iranians, who were bankrupt during the Trump administration. Now they're flush with cash because of our energy policies, and they are moving toward a nuclear weapon. And when they get one, they're going to use it. Because see, the threat of mutual destruction doesn't bother them. As far as they're concerned, if you destroy them, they go to heaven and get 72 virgins. So they don't care about the same things that have kept things under control in the past. And that's why it's so important that we get some reasonable leadership back in office. And you think about the implications of some of the policies. You know, one of the first things that Biden did is cancel the XL's Keystone Pipeline and put in place regulatory barriers to the use of our fossil fuels. Well, what did that do? Drive up the prices of energy. And of course, everything has to be transported by trucks. And they have to use gasoline. So all of those costs get passed on to the people. And then infusing trillions of dollars into the economy without a concomitant increase in products and services. Economics 101 tells you you're going to get inflation.
That's right.
And you get massive inflation with that. And it's hurting the people, it's hurting all the people. You know, a lot of people are wondering, why are the young people, why are the blacks, why are the Hispanics, why are all these traditional democratic strongholds moving? It's because everybody is impacted by what's going on.
That's right.
And we're in the fortunate position of having two philosophical differences in terms of political philosophy juxtaposed to each other. We don't have multiple years in between that people have to go back and think about. It was just a mere 4 years ago that you had logical policies juxtaposed to ideological policies that have nothing to do with the good of the people, but have everything to do with trying to accumulate power. The other thing that is happening in our country is the loss of faith, the loss of our relationship with God.
That's right.
And our Judeo-Christian values, what did they teach us about our relationship with each other? To love your neighbor. Not to cancel your neighbor if they have a different yard sign. Not to hate them if they have a different opinion. And that is hurting us tremendously. And the divisiveness is hurting us tremendously. You know, the United States of America is the major obstacle to one world governance. But how can they get us to cooperate? They cannot take us down militarily. The only way to take us down is internally.
That's right.
By destroying us from within, of having us fighting each other. And that's why they're driving wedges between our population on the basis of race, age, income, gender, political affiliation, religion, you name it, driving wedges, causing us to feel that we hate each other. And that, as Jesus said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. It's working. We have to be smart enough to realize that we're being manipulated. And some people think this is of recent origin. It's not of recent origin. If you go back and check the congressional record, January the 10th, 1963, Congressman Herlong of Florida read in the 45 goals of communism in America. What did they plan to do to fundamentally change our nation? Things like infiltrate the public school system and the teacher unions so you could indoctrinate the kids. The news media and Hollywood so that you can manipulate the opinions of the people. Get God out of all public domains and change the church from the real gospel to the social gospel.
Right.
Drive wedges between parents and children. Make sexual perversion normal, natural, and healthy. Corrupt the basic moral fiber of the entire society. Do you recognize any of those things?
Every single
Those are all the things that are happening and more. We outline all of this in our recent new book called The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. Because they know that by destroying the family and destroying our cohesiveness, they will be able to take us down. You know, in the beginning of our nation, there were communities everywhere, all over the country, 50 or 100 families, nobody else around for 25, 50, or 100 miles. Not only were those communities able to survive, but they thrived. In many cases, they didn't even speak the same language. They came from different countries, but they believed in something very important. It's called the common good. This is a phrase that you will see frequently in the writings of our founders. Not this group versus that group, what's good for this one and not for, but what is good for all of us. And that's what Donald Trump believes in. He believes that a rising tide floats all boats. And that's why you don't see him pandering to this group and pandering to that group like the Democrats do. And I think a lot of people understand and appreciate that. That's why a lot of the minorities are moving toward Trump. Not because they want special favor, it's just that they want everything to be equal for everybody, and they appreciate that. And you know, the worst thing that we can do is say, well, this group was discriminated against, so now let's discriminate against this group. Two wrongs don't make a right. You know, that's ridiculous. What instead we need to do is learn from mistakes and move forward. That's what wise people do. And have we made mistakes? We do, because we're composed of people. And people are not perfect, which is why we need a savior. You know, but smart people, they learn from mistakes and they move forward. Stupid people try to bury their mistakes so they can make them all over again. And I think we're smart people. And then in closing, just remember, there have been so many people throughout history who have sacrificed so much so that we could be free. Many people have fought and died for the freedom of this country. They didn't get to benefit themselves, but they thought about their children, their grandchildren, and all the people who would come after them. And that's what we have to think about. Some of us, like myself, are older. We're not going to be around in 30 years, but our kids will be here. Our grandkids will be here, and there'll be people who will come after them. What we are doing today will determine what kind of future they have. That's why we have to be willing to stand in the brink. We have to recognize that even if people say bad things about us, even if people try to cancel us, that's a brief discomfort against the backdrop of eternity. And we must be thinking far into the future. What are we willing to do? So it's not just a matter of you getting out and voting, but everyone in this room has a sphere of influence. You may not think you have a sphere of influence, but you do. There are people who watch you, there are people who love you, there are people who respect you. You need to talk to them. You know, you're told from the time that you're a little child, there are two things you don't talk about: religion and politics. That's exactly what you need to talk about. Because evil flourishes in darkness. Doesn't want you to shine the light on it. But it's time for us to recognize that we have to stand up and that you cannot be the land of the free if you're not the home of the brave. Thank you so much.